Okay, welcome everyone. This is the fourth webinar brought to you by Trinity P3, and obviously a very popular one from the number of attendees that we have today. And that's because it's about growing your independent agency in challenging times and beyond. So thank you for joining us. I hope your audio and your video is working well and you can see the presentation clearly. Just want to go through some housekeeping. So Peter, if you could. So first of all, again, thank you for joining. We're planning to finish sharply at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You can ask questions at any time. We do have a Q&A section, but if you want to ask a question, use the Q&A function at the bottom. Also, if the speakers ask you for a response, we've also opened the comments so that both panelists and attendees can comment. So if you just want to make a comment or respond to a question, please use that instead of the Q&A. And finally, we're recording this session for future use. So look forward to seeing it back soon on YouTube. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Peter. All right. What is the biggest opportunity for independent agencies and marketing consultants during these times of uncertainty? Well, the bottom line is, and the biggest answer is, getting corporate clients. Now, it's interesting because, running pitches, we often find that small independent agencies, while they will be included in the procurement process, will often struggle to bat above their weight in the marketplace. But the vast majority actually never get to experience the many benefits of landing or working with big corporate clients. The idea that big clients want big agencies is never been true, and in fact is changing rapidly. So what's stopping independent agencies from winning these clients? Well, either they don't think they can, or they don't know how they can. And so today, next slide, thanks, Peter. Today we've got two experts who are going to share it. The agency Accelerators is their company, and Susan Werkner and Peter Applebaum have had many years experience winning business from corporate clients and working with corporate clients, either for their own businesses, their own agencies and consultancies, or for other people. So we couldn't be in better hands than Susan and Peter, and please make them welcome. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, Darren. We're very excited about presenting this webinar today because it is something that's basically winning larger and corporate clients has been close to the heart of Susan and myself for the many years, because as Darren mentioned, we were business development directors for independent agencies for a number of independent agencies for a number of years, and also our own agencies for quite some time. So what we're going to do is take you through a very practical presentation on why you as an independent agency owner or in working for an independent agency can be very confident and positive about winning business in these challenging times and certainly beyond. So to start with, let's have a look at the esteemed Seth Godin, who's actually gave a testimonial for my book, which we're going to be talking about later in the webinar. And I love this expression. He said, "We've greatly exaggerated the risk of sinking without celebrating the value of swimming," which is so typical of so much of the media, if you will, but also the talk. The focus is on the negative. And we in agency world, I dare say I've never met somebody who works in an agency or certainly has started an agency who isn't an optimist. I know it's hard and challenging at the moment, but hopefully by the time 1 o'clock rolls around, you will have more reasons to be optimistic about what the future holds for your business. So let's have a look at the agenda. Firstly, we're going to have a look at the key issues facing agencies and clients, for that matter, right now, because we're not the only ones that have had some stress in our lives and in our businesses. The other key point, as Darren mentioned, we're really focusing on the fact that corporate clients want to work with you. It's not just it's not something that you should be scared to think about. It's something that we should actually be very excited to focus on, because they actually need to work with us, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail. And of course, particularly at the moment when budgets are being cut and projects cancelled and clients have gone to ground, we're all looking for getting quick wins. So we're going to go through some very, very specific steps as to what you can do. We've actually got a case study of an independent agency owner, and we're going to walk through how John is actually handling what's happening at the moment and the things he can do in chasing one particular client at the moment. And then we're going to talk about future-proofing your agency. Now, obviously, getting through this particular challenging time is central to all of us. But of course, we also want to know, well, what's the future going to hold? And the great point is that the research has shown from the Great Depression all the way through all the recessions and including the GFC, those organizations, both agencies and of course clients that invest in their marketing during these challenging times come screaming out of the blocks after the challenging times have passed. And that's obviously going to be a theme that we're talking about. And as Darren mentioned, we're going to be looking at a Q&A at the end of it, so we can answer as many questions as you like. And we're very excited that so many people have obviously shown a great deal of interest in coming on this webinar. And as I say, Susan and I have put a lot of work in to ensure that we provide a lot of value. So let's cut to the chase. Firstly, can independent agencies win large clients? Well, you may recognize some of these logos and some of these names, all of them household names. These are so there are about 20 logos here, but there's probably well over 100 corporate clients that Susan and I have brought in during our careers, both working for other small independent agencies and our own agencies. And as you can see, these are not inconsequential organizations. And we're going to take you through the strategies specifically as to how we did that and how we kept them, and obviously how we we calculated over hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue as a result of bringing in these corporate clients. So the answer to the question at the top of the slide is absolutely, you can win large clients through any times. It's actually worth mentioning that Susan had one of her biggest years ever during the GFC. So it just shows you that if you have a system to implement, there are lots of positive things that can flow from that. But first, let's meet John. John, who's imaginary, but essentially I guess he's an amalgam of the experiences that Susan and I have. But let's just say he's the CEO of the Creative Boutique. He's been running his agency for the last 8 years, and he's got 14 employees. He's been successful, and I'd like to actually make the point here that we absolutely understand that if you're on this webinar, you're already successful, because it's like you've been running a business, you've been involved in a business, you know what you're doing. So we in no way minimize the fact that we're talking to fellow professionals in this webinar, but because getting larger clients has been the focus of Susan and myself for all these years, and as we saw from the previous slide, quite successfully, he says immodestly. We think that we certainly know what we need to do. So John's been running his successful agency for 8 years, and he wants to get some certainty during these challenging times. He's wondering whether he needs to lay off his staff, whether he needs to really pull in his expenses. He's worried about where the next dollar is going to come from. Yes, he's got some ongoing clients. He may even have 1 or 2 corporate clients. But what we want to do is work with John and also show what he can do in a practical sense, because rather than just talking theoretically, let's talk about the sorts of things we're talking about and how they can apply to not just the fictitious John, but certainly you who are watching this webinar. So let's have a look at the key issues that are facing agencies and clients now. Remember, it's not just us, it's clients who are feeling the pressure as well. Every day there are new headlines saying that Bauer Media has just made 70 people redundant. The other day was Accent Stores, who have the shoe stores. They're rationalising their stores. Flight Centre is rationalising their 800 odd retail outlets as well. So every day we're getting the bad news. But again, as we're optimists and we're positive people in the agency world, we're going to have to, of course, we have to understand what the challenges are, but we're also going to, out of that comes opportunity, as we all know. So the first key issue, of course, is budgets being cut due to the COVID-19 concern. That's just a given. We're certainly not cockeyed idealists by any means. As I say, we're battle-hardened. We've been through several recessions, GFC as well. We know what happens during these contractions, these financial contractions and crises like we've never seen before. But what we're seeing is very familiar and very similar to what we've seen previously. And that's why the strategies we're talking about here can help you get through these challenging times and beyond. And then the next key issue as a result of the above, of course, is paying and keeping key staff. Something that obviously all agency owners are familiar with is lumpy cash flow, but that, of course, during these times in particular, leads to the business's viability. And obviously all of that comes back to the one key question: how on earth do I get revenue quickly? And now what we found from our many years of experience, but also speaking to many, many agencies before we started the agency accelerators, is that there are only two ways for you to achieve predictable growth for your agency. Number one is to get dramatically more business from your existing clients. And we all know the old story. It's 5 times more cost effective to get business from revenue from your existing clients than it is to get new clients. And I think there's no one on this webinar who would disagree with that. We certainly are on board. I mean, we've got strategies coming up that talks about getting those corporate clients in and then growing them dramatically. But the reality is, as we've probably all heard, is that clients are cutting back, they're cancelling projects. What do we do now? So let's assume that you've got that side of the business covered. You can try and dramatically get more business from existing clients, but let's face it, during these challenging times, it's far easier said than done. The other option, of course, is to win new big budget clients. So obviously, when we talk about big budget clients, it's a relative thing. So one of our clients is a single mum working from home. She is a graphic designer working in regional New South Wales. For her, getting a $10,000 a month client or a $15,000, $20,000 project would be fantastic. That is a big budget client, and that's absolutely appropriate. For others, you might want to win the $50 million IAG pitch. It's all relative, but the good thing is what we're talking about here today, the principles are exactly the same. Now, leading on from this, assuming that we're all on board with winning new big budget clients is the way to go to actually get your agency to grow your agency during these challenging times, but also to come out the other side in better shape. This next slide is actually probably the most important slide in the whole webinar that we're talking about. Because to me, I would actually be looking at this, it's cited there from moz.com, that less than 10% of agencies, this is research-based, implement any type of predictable business development system to build revenue. Think about it. So more than 90%, more than 9 out of 10 agencies out there right now do not have a predictable business development system to build their revenue. Is it any wonder that so many of those issues, so many of the issues we talked about in one of the previous slides, dog them on a regular basis? They have the lumpy cash flow. They don't know how to grow their agency. They have trouble hanging on to their key staff. What we're talking about, I guess it's with that knowledge and the experience that we've had with both our own agencies and speaking to over 100 other agencies, that's why we put this program together, because we know, and as Darren said, we've had many more people registering for this webinar than any others he's done to date, is that there is a real curiosity and, more to the point, a need for independent agencies to get some solidity and stability. And there's no better way, as we've discussed, than by winning corporate clients. Now, the good news, we've talked about some of the bad news, let's talk about the opportunity. There has never been a better time for independent agencies to win corporate clients. I know you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, right. Everyone's cutting budgets, no one's spending, no one's doing anything, marketing is being shut down. Let's talk again in 3 months' time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you from experience, absolutely untrue. Not true at all. And one of the main, well, 3 of the main reasons as to why that's not the case is that we independent agencies are better, faster, and cheaper. We actually can do things far better than the big multinational agencies or organizations or the huge media groups. It's like, when you think about it, it's like a dinghy can maneuver far more effectively than an aircraft carrier. So we see in Umbrella and the trade press, ad news, etc., how this large agency group has got rid of 50 staff, they've lost that client, etc., etc. They go into panic mode. You and I, who are independent agency owners, we can actually look at it and say, well, actually, let's pivot. Let's do something different to what we have been doing. We've got some great experience. And as I say, let's go back to the Creative Boutique. John has been doing great work. He's got a great body of work. He's got awesome runs on the board. How can we leverage that? Because as I mentioned, the corporates are looking for, let's start from the last thing we should be talking about, and that's the dollar thing. They're looking for more cost effective. Even before this crisis hit, I spent a lot of time speaking to procurement people, those wonderful people in procurement. God, we love them. And they were complaining about one particular large agency that will remain nameless. They're saying the service is not so great, and it's so expensive. So just because you have a marketing budget, as this particular client does, of $60 million a year, doesn't mean you don't want to get value for money. So if you can have a compelling offer, if you're better, if you can provide fantastic service almost as soon as client asks for something, faster, and if you can provide what you're doing in a more cost-effective way, I don't like the word cheaper, but it's like it's a good image. That's why I ran with it. But if you can do it in a more cost-effective way, which, let's face it, we all can, that's the way that we can win these corporate clients and get their attention. Now, Susan and I are not by any means sitting here and saying it's easy. It is absolutely not easy. Never has been easy, never will be easy. But it is absolutely possible if you have a plan, if you have a strategy, and if you have the commitment to create fantastic value for the organizations you're targeting. And I guess that's what we're looking to help you to do in this particular webinar, to show you that it is possible. And actually what we've found is, and as Darren, when we first started talking to Darren about this opportunity, he said one of the biggest challenges, as he mentioned at the top of the webinar, is that a lot of independent agencies don't think they can. We absolutely can. And hopefully even in the few slides we've already shown you, we've convinced you and we've put forward a compelling case, not just with nice hyperbole, but with logic and with proof that it is possible for you sitting there concerned about your livelihood to say, you know what, if I actually do this, if I actually implement a program, firstly, I'm better off than over 90% of the other people out there who are competing for the same dollar. But it's also going to help me to bring in the clients that is going to help me to create the lifestyle, the business that I'm looking for. Help me to keep great staff, get new staff, build a whole range of new things. All the sorts of challenges we may be having financially during this time can be put to the side. I'm not saying it's not, as I say, it's not easy, but it's absolutely possible. But one of the things we also always speak to clients about is getting quick wins. So this is where I'd like to take you through, and I'm going to use John, going back to John, our CEO of the Creative Boutique, as a case study, because it's much more meaningful than if you just stand in front of people, or even via Zoom, and say, this is what you can do. We're actually going to say, let's look at a case study of how John from the Creative Boutique gets quick wins. Now, we've got a 4-step process that, as I say, it's battle tested, it's proven in all different types of conditions. We've used it in the US. Susan actually worked in New York in business development in New York agencies, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, because that's a fantastic story and should give you all a lot of confidence as to what you can do. There's nothing you can't do when it comes to winning clients. We've got this 4-step process, I should say. The first step is to identify your most profitable niche. Now, I actually want to say from the get-go, you're going to be looking at this and say, where's the magic bullet? Where's the surprise? Where's something I haven't heard before? You probably will have heard of every single one of these steps. But as I say to clients when they're saying, well, okay, I know all about email marketing, I know about content marketing and niche and all that sort of stuff. That's great, but are you doing it? Are you actually putting it together into a program? Then I'm not being great at maths, I always say, are you doing something where 1 + 1 can equal 10? That's what we're about. And that's what business development is about. A lot of it is not skill as much as basically doing what needs to be done. It's like training for a marathon. You don't just get onto the field and say, okay, I'm going to run 42 kilometers now. It doesn't work. You've got to do the training. You've got to have a plan. You've got to do the training, and you've got to get ready to actually do what you need to do. And that's what this 4-step program has shown that we can do. So identify your most profitable niche. So what niches are growing? For example, e-commerce, home fitness, hobbies and games. Now let's go back to John. John has been doing a lot of work, let's say in healthcare, in building and construction. He's got great work from a branding point of view, strategic development, and even some advertising and collateral design and creation. But his markets, his niches are not growing. They've gone into lockdown. So what John has decided, he's a smart guy. He's actually had a look at it and he said, you know what, my daughter loves My Little Pony. So I think looking at her playing with My Little Pony toys, I've got some fantastic ideas for the manufacturer's My Little Pony. And who's that? That's Hasbro Australia. And Monica Rossell is the marketing director of Hasbro here in Australia. So he's decided, yes, he's got all this fantastic work, and he's not abandoning his niche. He's also going to look at a niche where it's absolutely going circus berserkers. And one of the things that he's looking at is how you can craft your offer to the needs you know they have. one of my friends talking about hobbies and toys runs a hobby store in Sydney, suburban Sydney. And he is absolutely going crazy. Now, you think a hobby store is kind of old school and a bit old fashioned, and it is, and so is he. But the point is, he's also very smart, and he basically spent the end of last year, spent a lot of time updating his e-commerce capabilities, and he is going crazy via his website. People aren't necessarily walking to a shop as much, but they are ordering like topsy via his now enabled website to do some great things. So he's actually beautifully set up and he's making a lot of money. So going back to John, he knows that he's had a look at Hasbro's website. He sees that, okay, I think e-commerce is okay, but it can be done better. I've got some great strategies that can help Hasbro to enhance the e-commerce offering. Because let's face it, they need it. The demand is there. People are at home. They want to keep the kids occupied. Let's focus on that. Then they have to craft that. That's crafting the offer to the needs that you know they have. Now, this next one's a really big one. Well, actually, it's a big one because we're talking about starting small. The point being, a lot of people say, oh, I want to work with American Express. I want to work with McDonald's. I want to get the huge budgets. And if you do that, more strength to your arm. But the reality often is you have to do it in a bit of a different way. We worked with a vision care company called Alcon, a multinational corporate in the healthcare space. And when I first was speaking to them, they said, oh, look, I'm not sure about digital marketing, but look, we've got this database from a consumer promotion we did of 2,500 people who've opted in to receive more emails, more communications. I think the first invoice I sent them for that email send that we did was around $2,500 to $3,000. Over the next several years, they spent several $100,000 with us. So yes, it's all very exciting to win the big pitch. And if you do it, fantastic. But often the smart way to get corporate clients is to just get your foot in the door. And the next part of that is yin when they yang. So what that means, for example, I'll give you another example. We worked for a promotional agency and everyone wanted to get with Kellogg. They wanted to work with Kellogg because you've got on-pack promotions and they spend money on TV advertising, the whole 9 yards. And no one could get through because they have the agencies they've been working with for many, many years. I decided, well, why don't I actually speak to the trade marketing manager, not the marketing department, because they're overrun with people calling them all the time. No one spoke to the trade marketing manager. Again, we won the business. We did a whole lot of account-specific promotions for Woolworths, for Coles, etc. And again, several $100,000 later, we had a client with whom we were very happy. So John's thinking about doing these things as well. So he's looking to go look at alternate ways of doing things. So next one is organic outreach. Obviously, if you're talking B2B, which most of us are when it comes to working on the agency side, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. It's really being active on these platforms, primarily, particularly LinkedIn. Facebook, obviously, maybe not as much, but certainly LinkedIn is something you need to be active on. I always say that if I wasn't running an agency, I wouldn't necessarily be doing all this social media stuff. But of course, that's just me having a bit of a mumble and a grumble. I love it and I enjoy it and I get a thrill every time someone likes what we do. And I know Darren from Trinity P3 is a huge fan of content marketing. It's a big part of his business, and rightly so. He does a fabulous job. If you ever go on LinkedIn and Darren's one of your connections, let's just say you'll get a few pieces of content from Darren, all of it high quality. So basically getting out there, creating a name for yourself, creating a reputation, and then we do warm calling. And I guess people have heard of cold calling, cold emailing, and yes, that's a thing. But the more effective you are in engaging with people via where they are, the more welcome your messages are going to be. So I call it warm calling and emailing. Yes, get on the phone. Sometimes it's a bit confronting for a lot of people, but calling someone you've never met before, but who may have heard of you, is a fabulous way of doing that. And emailing somebody and seeing what they've actually opened and clicked on is one of the best ways of saying, hi, Monica, I noticed that you opened this email that we sent. I know it's a big brotherish, but these days I think marketing professionals are kind of used to it. We noticed you clicked on this article about how My Little Pony can really increase sales via your e-commerce platforms. I've got some specific strategies. Can I come and talk to you? Business development, as you know, is not one thing. It's doing 100 things, 10 things, 50 things, 100 things. And who knows which one works? So one of you may be on this webinar today and it's like saying, actually, that really resonates. That's something that I can really relate to. So warm calling and emailing is very important. be where they are. Now, obviously, if we'd given this webinar 2 months ago, that would be go to the conferences, go to events and all these sorts of things. We can't do that anymore. But it's like certainly webinars are a very big thing now. And if you can actually go to a webinar where they're on and actually you can see they're on, for example, if you look at some of the comments, you can see who's there. Show up and actually be part of the conversation. I've heard it before, but it's a very, very important thing. And a very important thing as well is to make lots of positive noise out there in the marketplace. Help people. You're not looking to close. As I say, the premise of my book, Customer Romance, is you're not necessarily looking to marry someone the first time you meet them. It's about creating positive relationships with them. And obviously, content marketing is a very important way of doing that, making that positive noise. You become an opinion and thought leader. For example, we have a LinkedIn group. We've got over 460 people, the corporate digital marketing group. And that's a thought leadership thing. Have I got business from it directly? Not at all. But it's a thought leadership position, which is very, very important. And this is going to sound like a really type of thing to say, and I apologise to people saying, come on, I'm spending my valuable time here listening to this webinar. Give me something more substantial and follow up. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, so many people don't. They make one call, they send one email, and the prospect never hears from them again. One of the clients with whom I've had the greatest success over the years, I didn't work with him for 3.5 years. We met each other, we got on well, we kept in touch, we spoke every 2 or 3 months, and eventually he landed at a company where they needed our help, and several $1 million later, we're still working with them. So it just shows you that it's like following up is simple, doesn't cost you anything, organic, as we say, it's part of number 2, but it's something that absolutely pays dividends over the long term. Number 3 is to automate your prospecting. Again, let's go back to John. Let's say that he's not necessarily getting through to Monica, who's the marketing director. There are 27 people in the marketing function in Hasbro Australia. Maybe you can try speaking to the other 26. That's another thing you can do. Or you can also do Google, Facebook, LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn is probably not as effective, certainly as Google and Facebook, but there's a lot of different things you can do. You can create industry and company-specific content marketing. Susan worked for a time in New York, as I mentioned, in several agencies doing business development. And as you can appreciate, back then, like a few years ago, several years ago, there was huge competition in New York, as there still is or was, for any type of business. Susan created a report off her own bat of trends, did some research for in the financial services industry. She was targeting financial services organizations. She was near Wall Street. And after a lot of knocking on doors with the specific content that she had that was only hers and no one else had it, she managed to pick up Citibank as a client and Manchester Hanover. That's I don't think they're around anymore, but they were also a very, very large financial institution. So fresh out of Australia, coming over with no contacts, no school that she went to, it's the same people in the marketing department. It is possible. So there's lots of things that are possible if you actually get out there and hustle. And webinars. Who would have thought these webinar things work? So here we are on the webinars, and this is going to be recorded once, and it's going to be played forever on YouTube. It's going to be that you're going to be sent a link. Those people who can't see this live will receive a link. They will see it. It will be on YouTube. It will be indexed by YouTube, which, as you know, is the second most popular and most powerful search engine in the world. And people are going to be finding this webinar for the next 5+ years. That's a pretty good investment of time to create a presentation that has a lot of value for the people who are watching. And number 4, pitch to win. We hate pitches, don't we? We all hate pitches. Wouldn't it be great if clients just basically said, it's yours, we think you're fabulous, but it's not reality. Strategies we have for pitching, and we go into great detail when it comes to pitches, because pitches, as we mentioned, are a reality and we need to be comfortable and confident with them. And top line, here's how we are confident, how we do create greater confidence with our clients, is to develop internal champions. And leading on from that, that helps us to create an unfair advantage. Nothing unethical, nothing unprofessional, but it's basically the more you get to know about the organization, their needs, their fears, needs, and desires, and what they're looking for with their partner, the more an advantage you have. Now, of course, nothing's guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed, as we know. We've all had pitches we've won and we've lost, where in our agency lives, we're happy that we've won most of the pitches we've done. But there are a lot of other factors that can enter into it when it comes to whether you win a pitch or not. So we're not getting carried away and saying this is absolutely guaranteed to win every time, but this puts you in the best possible way to actually win. And then leading on from that, if you can understand exactly what their problem is and deliver the best solution, that's where you get the best possible way of winning. Now, you're not necessarily, as I say, you're not necessarily going to win everything, but if you actually understand what their problem is outlined in the brief, but then what their real problem is. The fact is, the last agency they were working for charged them more than they should have, and they took 3 days to get back to them. They probably didn't put that in the brief. That's a sort of unwritten thing that the more you get to know them, you get your internal champions, you can create that unfair advantage and understand exactly what the real problem is. That's where you get the best possible solution. And then finally, a lot of people don't work in larger organizations because they're risk takers. Trade on their risk aversion. Trade on the fact that they're working for these organizations because they're looking to obviously get the good bucks, the reputation, and also have the opportunity to I guess, be the client. It's good being the king and all that. But the point is, being the servant, the intelligent, consultative servant, if you will, to a king, if you get the best client, it's the best thing in the world, as we know. And as I say, there are many experienced people on this webinar who know exactly what I'm talking about. But I guess going back to, as I say, the key slide so far, and I'm going to hand over to Susan, is that the vast majority of agencies do not do this. They do it in an ad hoc way. We as agencies have the opportunity to protect ourselves in the most amazing way that many of us have never done before, which is going to lead me to hand over to Susan to talk about future-proofing your agency.
Thanks, Peter. Well, I think everyone's sitting there now saying, great, that's fantastic. John now has pivoted. He's going to be selling little ponies now rather than going to construction. That's certainly a pivot, I would suggest, for any agency owner. But as Peter said, you can use the same strategies that you've been using with your current clients. Think about what areas are currently booming and how do you then use that to pivot and future-proof your agency. So what is future-proofing your agency? The only way to future-proof your agency is to make sure you do have a business development program in place, something that helps you drive that business development machine day in, day out, week by week, and month by month. And as Peter kindly said, we both have had a lot of experience with agencies, and I've spent a number of years working for large agencies in New York. They would not have created and landed the large agencies if they did not have a business development program in place. So that really is the key. Now, what we found in our experience is really there's 3 key ways that you can actually future-proof your agency. So the first way that you can do that is by hiring a business development executive. Now, that is something that some of you might have. You might have hired business development executives before. The fact with them, they can work. If you've got great business development executive, that's fantastic. And that's definitely one way you can future-proof your agency, but they do come at a cost. Usually $100,000 plus for a really good business development executive, plus the commissions you're going to pay them. Few issues with that. They may or may not turn out. I know we've hired many people in our agencies, and I think like one of the major agency owners said, usually it's 50%. You get 50% of the time you get it right. So that's one issue. The second is they'll leave. So if they're good, they'll end up leaving, going elsewhere. They walk out the door with those contacts, with those clients and the IP. Business development, again, falls to the back burner. So number 2, second option that you could obviously use. Most of you are probably doing this. It's a very typical agency owner to do it yourself. And that is something that also has its downfalls. It could be great if you love business development and you're out there and you've got a team behind you, fantastic. But many agencies owners don't really like business development. That's something that Peter and I happen to love. That's our most favorite part of running an agency. We love winning new clients. And I know every agency loves winning a new client. So again, the downfall though is if you're the agency owner, you'll wear many hats. You're running the agency, you're winning clients, you're doing pitches, you're looking after the admin and staffing, not to forget staffing issues. That always is an area that needs a lot of attention. So they're the downfalls. And frankly, it can be also not fun, and it can be quite stressful and pressured at the time and lonely. Many of the agency owners we've spoken to, it's actually lonely at the top, even for CEOs, but also for agency owners. So that's some of the ways. So that's number 2. That's how you also can do business development and have a program. But the third option is the option that we are suggesting and know that works, is having someone like Peter and I, who are really experienced business development people that have run our own agencies, have built and won millions of dollars for the agencies we've worked for, and have a program in place where we can help you, to mentor you, to coach you, and put a consistent program in place that's going to build your agency the way you need to keep it future-proof. So, how does that actually work? So our program, the Agency Accelerators program, is really a 4-step program. As Peter has outlined, we had John, who's obviously winning new and pivoting and winning new clients, but we really help and coach and mentor you week by week, and we mentor you and your team. So number one, what we help you to do is identify your most lucrative industry and clients. As we said, where have you had success before? If that's not working now in challenging times, let's pivot. Let's see what is working now and where your skill set would be most needed with clients that you could win today. Secondly, we also then have creating your most compelling offer. That's also important. An outside perspective gives you a wonderful way to look at your service offering and think outside the box. Make sure that your offer is most compelling to that target that you're now offering that service to. And thirdly, there's also giving you the strategies to open doors. A lot of the agencies owners we've spoken to before have said, look, but Susan, I don't have any contacts in Hasbro or in American Express. How do we go about that? Well, there's countless strategies that you can use. As Peter mentioned, I used one specific strategy when I was in New York, opening the doors for financial service organizations, and we can help you to also open the doors for your niche that you want to be in. So really, the other one is joining a group of like-minded agency owners. Another factor, it can be lonely at the top. It can be hard slog day in, day out. And if you don't have too many clients, it can be hard to get that business development engine going. So if working with us, you will join a group of like-minded, ambitious agency owners that want to win and want to celebrate your successes and even help share strategies and tactics that are going to work now and into the future. So the other area that we really think is very important is, like we hear it all the time for the hundreds of agencies we've spoken to, saving time. You don't have that much time as an agency owner. So because we have a program that you can actually put and implement into your agency, it saves you time and it gives you quick wins. So the program itself is an ongoing program. So we actually help you, as we said, into the future, because business development is not a short-term thing. You can obviously have quick wins in a short term and be very intensive, but it really is something that needs to be an ongoing program, month by month, year to year, to really scale your agency. So you're probably thinking to yourself, I've been in business 10 years or 15 years, 5 years. Why do I need a mentor or a coach? And that's a legitimate question. Well, you might want to look here and see a few relatively successful entrepreneurs, super successful, I would suggest. One thing they all have in common, they all had mentors and coaches throughout their business career. So someone like Mark Zuckerberg, he had Steve Jobs mentoring him throughout his career. There's also, you can see, we have Mark Boris. He had Kerry Packer. Every month for 6 years, Kerry Packer would coach Mark Boris. All of them, we have countless. Who else? Bill Gates. Bill Gates, for example, had Warren Buffett. So don't think that these successful, wildly successful entrepreneurs and business owners did it on their own. Everyone needs a coach. As Peter said earlier, if you want to win Olympic running, you don't just run out there. You have to train for it, and you have to have a coach that's going to really push you that you're going to succeed for whatever dreams that you want for your agency. They will give you the support and the outside perspective and the program to get you there. So how does it work? So the investment for you is, we have the, as we said, the program. It's an ongoing program. It's a one-off, $6,800. And that program provides you with weekly coaching, weekly mentoring, and putting a unique strategy in for your agency to help you get those wins for your client and build that business development program. Now, we also have, just for the next 14 days, Darren's twisted our arm, we have a special package, which is $3,000 less. So our program is $3,800 for the next 14 days. That's a one-off payment only. And you have lifetime access to business development program and the mentoring coaching to get you where you want to go. Importantly, because now is such a challenging time, we've also made sure that we put in an extra bonus of quick wins. So we have a 30-day sprint. We'd love you to join. It would be great fun. And that's something else. I mean, Peter and I love working with agencies because it's fun. We're in a creative area. We can actually pivot and help these clients that need our help at the moment. So 30-day sprint is also part of that package. So if you're interested, we'd love you to sign up for a free strategy session with us and speak with us, and we can help and talk through a unique strategy just for you. So if you go to our URL, it's theagencyacceleratorss.com/TrinityP3, and we'd love to have you join us. Thank you.
Guys, that's great. Thank you. Terrific presentation, but wondering if you're open to taking some questions now for the Q&A.
Of course.
Sure.
We've got 18 minutes, Darren. It's like we're all theirs.
We'd love it.
Are there any? I'll just wait while people are coming through with their questions. But so make sure, remember to use your Q&A function on the platform to ask the question. Susan and Peter, one of the things as a pitch consultant is that we often have procurement people say that they are worried about small agencies and their business viability, especially in the current circumstances. Do you think that it's best, well, it's almost answering itself, what's the best way of winning business? Because pitches, especially procurement run pitches, often work against smaller agencies.
You want to take that, Susan?
Yeah, look, I think I think it's all about positioning. I think if you can position yourself as someone that if you have experience, you have history, you've got some great case studies. And I think more important, a lot of agencies when they're talking to corporate clients spend too much on themselves. Talk about the client's problems and focus on what their needs are and how you've served them. So I think it's hard to get around if someone is nervous about if for example, your agency is a proprietary limited, that gives them a sense of comfort, I guess, in some respects. So that's probably one of the first things that makes it easier. But again, I think if you have a good story to tell, you've done the research on both the prospect and the company, and you have a great creative idea for them, they're still going to go for you.
Look, we've won business. For example, we were involved in a pitch years ago with Target retail chain, and we were up against the Campaign Palace, which at the time was their agency, and one other agency, both in Melbourne. We're in Sydney, and we won the pitch on the basis of, as Susan just said, a superior idea. And look, you're right, procurement can be prickly people, if you will, and they're just doing their job. But I think again, there's no guarantee with any pitch, but if you basically demonstrate that you have the way, as Susan rightly said, it's not about us, it's about you, the client. If we can demonstrate that we've helped these other 10 clients achieve amazing results, and your organization will miss out if you don't choose us, it puts you in a far better light.
Right. We've got a question here, and that is, what do you recommend, or do you recommend any particular CRM system for agencies? I mean, outside the program, the actual CRM systems, are there any that you think work particularly well for agencies?
Look, I think I'm a fan of Salesforce. I know that I'm probably, Susan will laugh when I say this, I'm probably using 5% of its capabilities, as we all are when it comes to, most of us are when it comes to computers. But it works for me. Any system that works for you is the system you should use. There's great power in being able to look up and see, okay, I spoke to Monica at Hasbro and I had a conversation with her on the 23rd of February 2013, and this is what she said. Now, I guess you could say that's, obviously whoever hasn't spoken to Monica for 7 years is not listening to our program, but the point is, as I say, that's the basic promise and premise of CRM. And can I actually say, the stats, and I talked about this in my book, the stats are quite similar to the number of agencies that don't have biz dev programs. 80% of CRM implementations fail. Why? And we've had experience with this with several clients, and they spend the millions of dollars with these organizations. They've got the nice shiny piece of software, but then the people don't do the thing they should be doing, which is inputting a whole lot of information and keeping a record of calls, and it just doesn't work because of the people factor. The software, all the software, and not all of them, but obviously a lot of the software programs, HubSpot, for example, all those sorts of CRM.
I use HubSpot.
Yeah, Susan uses HubSpot. It's they're great. They have a lot of benefits, but it all falls down if you don't use it. So no matter what the program, you've got to ensure that you keep using it, which is the same as the essential foundation of what we're talking about today.
A follow-up question is are there any that are not so expensive? Susan, perhaps.
Well, HubSpot's free. Actually, they've got a free version, which actually, unless you're doing really quite, split testing and checking your, getting traffic, inbound traffic to your website, if you're really using a CRM for business development and getting those contacts and leads in and remembering, okay, I spoke to Jennifer last week from American Express. I promised this week I'd give her a call because she was busy to speak last week. Then HubSpot, I think, is free. HubSpot is great, works really well. It has a very intuitive interface. That's why Peter and I always have these discussions. He's a Salesforce fan. I thought it was far too complicated, but I do think HubSpot is one of the good ones. Look, there's so many out there. I really think it's just a matter of, looking through each of the CRMs and seeing what suits you. I know Salesforce actually at the moment, a lot of them, including Salesforce, has some specials on because of COVID-19. So you can look those up.
Okay. Look, and we, Trinity P3, we used one called SharpSpring, which allows you to also track the traffic to your website. So we could actually see who was responding and what they were looking at on the website. So,
and to that point, Darren, we also use ActiveCampaign because we do a lot of email marketing, and that does exactly that. So it just says that Darren has opened this email on the 29th of April 2020 and clicked on these links, and it goes straight into his record.
Okay, another question. What's your win rate and an example of success for your Accelerator program?
The win rate for what? For the clients?
For winning new business. So if an agency signed up, what have you seen, or what would you see as far as from your experience as improvement?
Look, this is the beauty of business development. It's if you actually do it in an ordered, integrated, sequential way, you will get results. And as long as you do it in an intelligent way, like if you go and say, okay, I'm a one-man band and I'm running, I want to go get the IAG $60 million piece of business. Ain't going to happen. It's the old horses for courses. So look, I think with regards to the success rate, I think I'm not going to put a figure on it, but the success rate is high, and it will be high for anyone who does this, because I always say when it comes to like digital marketing, for example, one of the biggest opportunity clients have at the moment, and it has been amazingly, even though we've had 25 years of commercialization of the internet, is that most organizations are either not doing it at all or are doing it very poorly. So if you actually go out there and do things well, you're going to stand out from your competition.
It's actually quite interesting. It's a bit like dieting, isn't it? We all know how to diet, but in actual fact, it requires you to actually take the steps, doesn't it, to get a result?
Well, that's right. I mean, that's a subject very close to my heart, Darren. In this lockdown, there you go. Well, I actually lost 15 kilos in the last 3 months or so, because instead of gorging myself like I would have liked to, I've been on a pretty strict program. And it's the old story. Diet is exactly the same analogy. It's like if you stick to it, you'll get the results. So it's the same thing with our program. It's like I think the success rate, look, we're not guaranteeing you're going to get McDonald's or IAG or BHP, but the point is you will get business. That is absolutely guaranteed if you follow the program.
Now, there's another question. What do you think? Oh, sorry, Susan, did you have something you wanted to add?
I guess the same thing. I was just going to say, look, we've had, for example, we had just the other week, we're working with an agency that has been trying to get into the US market, for example. And it took us, they went through the program, and really they were quite surprised. They'd been trying for, I think, the last 6 months or 12 months. And obviously things are not good in the US, but they picked up a small, okay, it wasn't a huge client, but they picked up some work in the US because they implemented the program. So like you said, if they implement the program, they're consistent and follow what we need them to do and utilize our expertise, then they can win business, even offshore. That's the point. We don't, you know, a lot of Australian agencies think they only have to market to Australian companies. You can actually market to offshore, you know, corporates or small or businesses and win clients. That's something we've learned as well, especially with, unfortunately, the Australian dollar being so low. It does make it a viable proposition for the right type of agency. Obviously, you have to be set up for that type of thing. You have to have the right service.
And that's the point. So if I just add there, I think a lot of, if you've got the right mindset, and it's just one client is just the beginning. The whole point of this is to create business development momentum. Firstly, if you have a good team, including yourself, to build that business, and then next month you get more opportunities. Your pipeline is full, and then over a period of time, you're getting all these new opportunities. You're not going to win all of them. We're not saying that at all. We're realists. You're going to get all these new opportunities, some of which you're going to win, and it's going to build your business very, very quickly.
Yep. Look, here's a question that I wouldn't mind answering, because it's been an interesting change that's happened in the last few weeks. And that is, they're asking, what do you think the actual future of agency model with increased internationalisation of clients, building in-house agency model over the last 10 years? And you would say that that trend towards international clients working with international agencies and then building these in-house capabilities is certainly huge in the US. And we haven't really seen it expand to a great extent. Mostly what's happening, especially in Australia, is people are building production hubs in-house rather than agencies to do a lot of the collateral, or what they see as collateral, as part of social and digital media. The interesting thing with the pandemic is that we're also seeing a lot of clients questioning the idea of globalization, because we've seen, you know, countries have had to close their borders, and that's having an impact on the way of thinking in business about each country being self-sustained. And I actually think that if that trend consolidates, we could see a return to clients wanting to have more local independent agencies. I think there was already some of that happening as a little bit of a backlash around the way, you know, the share prices of the holding companies have really tanked in the last couple of years, especially in the last 12 months, which puts a question mark over the sort of financial performance of the agencies. I know that's a bit of a chicken and egg, because it's the clients that are paying less, so the agencies are making less. But you know, there's definitely a trend out there for clients looking for more agile, faster, more self-contained solutions than necessarily buying into the global network. Susan, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think one of the comments, I agree 100% with you. And I think one of the, talking about, because I know that you had a webinar recently talking about how the agency model has changed. And it has, you know, agencies, you know, working in New York a few years ago in their agency, you know, era, that was, you know, fantastic. There were big budgets. There was a lot of creativity. Clients didn't care how much they would spend. Totally different now. Every single marketing, you know, CMO is now saying, how can I do more with my budget? And that's putting even more pressure on these agencies. And if you've got a big agency and they've got expensive overheads and expensive personnel, they can't afford to then work on the smaller pieces of business, which a smaller independent agency could work on and still have more senior people working on that business. So I agree with you. I think that's where there's an opportunity for the independent agencies to grab that part of the business where they can still have more senior people working on the business at slightly lower rates than a big agency, and they can win those, and they can actually, as you said, use that for business development for themselves, get their foot in the door, so to speak.
And if I could say something slightly controversial, particularly to our brothers and sisters in large agencies, and this is completely without any statistical validation, in my experience, I've found that the best and the brightest generally work for independent agencies, smaller independent agencies. Maybe that's self-serving in that I've for many years worked in independent agencies, but I do think that that clients can get the best outcomes by working with, for the reasons we talked about earlier in the webinar, but by working with the smaller, agile, ambitious and driven independent agencies. And obviously you've got to pick the right one. But I think that there are, that's what I'm saying. I think the times, ironically, as tragic as they are for so many people, I actually think the times actually suit the smart independent agency.
We've got another one. Thanks, Peter. We've got another one here. As an independent, where we can be agile and create new models that challenge the agency norm, but are incredible for the future. This has been successful with small to mid clients, but it's been a challenge for some corporates that have less of an appetite for changes that than we're used to. What is the advice for pushing the future with the traditional corporates out there?
Well, my suggestion, that Susan, if I could answer this, I think that there's no absolute. There's no absolute. If you've spoken to 10 large corporates and they've said no, it doesn't mean that every corporate is going to say no. So look, as I say, the challenge with business development is putting up with rejection. That's a given. I'm not in any way resiling from the fact that comes with the territory. But there are many corporates out there. They may not. And quite frankly, another thing which I would put a bit of a tip in there, which has been very successful for us, is that there are a lot of large corporate organisations that no one's ever heard of. They may turn over billions of dollars. One of our our biggest ever client, no one's heard of, and they're a $2 billion turnover company here in Australia and New Zealand. So I think the point is we all read the trade press and we get excited by the TVCs and all the campaigns and the things that are winning awards. But I always like to go for often either the challenger brands. And a challenger brand doesn't necessarily have to be owned by a small to medium company. It can be it might be a secondary or a third tier brand for a large corporate. This is why I'm saying a yin when they yang and often start small. So some of these medium smaller companies that the questionnaire is talking about, you can take what you're talking about, find a champion, an internal champion, and you can develop that from not very much into hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. We've done it before and it can be done.
Guys, there's about 5 or 6 more questions, but we've run out of time. That's been a fantastic session. Thank you very much. Do you mind going to the next slide? Just to remind everyone, there is the offering of for 20 people to receive a 30-minute strategy session. We'll send out a link tomorrow, also a link to the video of this session, and those 20 people will also get a hard copy of the book. That's actually the wrong URL, but we'll go to the next slide. Now, we are recording this. What I'd say to you is if you want to keep up with, we're going to have a succession of webinars and other events going forward. So one of the best ways is to go to trinityp3.com/subscribe and just make sure you subscribe to the database, because that way we can keep you up to date. I'll also make sure that we follow up with the questions that haven't been answered, and we'll email those through to you. Finally, we do have a couple of webinars, but these two are actually going to be quite late in the evening, because they're for the UK and for and Europe, and that's unlocking performance post-lockdown. So that's talking about ways that agencies, procurement and marketers can actually find better ways of making the marketing dollar go further, because I think we're all realising that the future is going to be possibly a bit cash poor, but the role of marketing still needs to help businesses grow their brands and grow their business. Before we go, I'd just like to thank Susan and Peter again from the agency Accelerators. It's been a terrific session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren.
Here's our contact details for Trinity P3. And we hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be, I think, for Australia, will be the 19th of May, and it's about marketing and education for the future. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.